Evolution has turned completely different animals into crabs. Not once, not twice, at least 5 separate times. Totally unrelated creatures, millions of years apart, in different oceans, all independently decided to become crabs. And the wild part is, scientists have a name for it. It's called carcinization, which is just a fancy way of saying nature keeps making crabs and nobody fully knows why. First things first, most of what you think is a crab isn't actually a crab. King crabs, hermit crabs, porcelain crabs. A lot of these guys are what scientists call false crabs. They look like crabs, they move like them, but if you actually trace their family tree back, they come from completely different ancestors than true crabs. They just independently evolve the same body shape over millions of years. That's the whole thing. That's carcinization. Different animals, same outcome. Flat body, tucked tail, sideways walk, over and over again. Now to understand why this keeps happening, you gotta understand what a true crab actually is. Scientists have a pretty specific checklist. The shell has to be wider than it is long. There has to be distinct edges on the sides. The underside has to be a broad fused plate. And the tail, technically called the abdomen, has to be folded completely underneath the body so you can't even see it from above. If you picture a crab in your head right now, that's exactly what you're looking at. No tail hanging out, just this flat disc of a body with legs. The first true crabs showed up around 200 million years ago, back in the Jurassic period. So while dinosaurs were just getting started on land, crabs were quietly doing their thing in the ocean. For a while, nothing crazy happens. But then you hit the Cretaceous period, roughly 145 to 66 million years ago, and things get wild. Scientists actually call this the Cretaceous crab revolution. And that's not just a cool name. About 80% of the crab families we know today originated during this time. Crabs just exploded in diversity. They developed stronger claws, became better hunters, and started moving into new environments. Rivers, beaches, and eventually land. Which is insane for an animal that breathes through gills, but they made it work. But here's the thing that really gets people. Carcinization didn't just happen once and then crabs took over. It happened independently, multiple times, in animals that weren't even related to each other. True crabs evolved the crab shape from one ancestor. King crabs evolved it from hermit crabs. Porcelain crabs got there from squat lobsters. These are completely separate branches of the crustacean family tree, all arriving at the same design. And king crabs are a perfect example of how weird this gets. Their ancestors literally used to carry snail shells on their backs, just like the tiny hermit crabs you see on beaches. But over time, they got too big for that. Their bodies hardened up and flattened out, and they turned into something that looks like a regular crab. Except, if you look at their insides, their organs are still lopsided, asymmetrical. Because hermit crabs have asymmetrical bodies, so they can coil into spiral shells. King crabs never fully fixed that, so they're walking around looking like crabs, but internally, they're still kind of hermit crabs. Evolution doesn't always clean up after itself. So why does this keep happening? Why does the crab shape keep winning? Scientists have a few theories, and honestly, it's probably a combination of all of them. The first one is protection. A crab shell covers the top of its body and the tail is tucked underneath. There's no soft exposed belly for a predator to bite into. Compare that to lobster, where the whole tail is just out there in the open. Easy target. Crabs basically solve that problem. The second is stability. Crabs are wide, flat, and low to the ground. You can wedge yourself into a crack in a reef and stay there. Nothing can flip you over. Your center of gravity is basically on the floor. Then there's a sideways movement thing. Most crabs walk sideways, and there's actually a reason for that. If a predator comes at you, you can dart left or right without turning your whole body around. Your eyes stay on the threat while you escape. Most animals have to turn and run, which means they stop looking at the danger. Crabs don't have that problem. And then there's versatility, which might actually be the biggest one. Once you get rid of that big tail, your legs are free to evolve into basically anything. Some crabs have paddle legs for swimming. Some have digging legs for burrowing. Some have thick legs for walking on land. The crab body plan is like a base model you can customize, and evolution loves things it can customize because that means you can adapt to new environments without starting from scratch. A lobster tail actually limits what the rest of your body can do. You're hauling this huge thing around and it constrains your options. Get rid of it and suddenly you've got room to experiment. But here's something nobody really talks about. Sometimes crabs stop being crabs. There's a term for that too. Decarcinization. And it happened at least 7 times. Frog crabs are true crabs that evolved back into a longer, narrower shape because they needed to burrow in the sand. Mole crabs turn themselves into smooth little torpedoes. They barely look like crabs at all. And then there's the hermit crab situation, which is kind of a mind bender. Hermit crabs gave up being crab-shaped so they could live inside snail shells. That's decarcinization. But then king crabs evolved from hermit crabs and went back to being crab-shaped. So you've got crabs that became not crabs, that became crabs again. It's crabs all the way down. The reason any animal would stop being a crab comes down to the same logic as why they would become one in the first place. Being a crab is great for a lot of things, but if you need to burrow straight down into sand really fast, being flat and wide is actually a disadvantage. Evolution doesn't care about being consistent, it just does whatever helps you survive right now. So will everything eventually become a crab? No. This really only happens to crustaceans because their bodies are built in a modular way. They've got segments that can be rearranged. Humans don't have that. You're not waking up as a crab anytime soon. But within crustaceans, yeah, it's probably going to keep happening. If it keeps working, there's no reason to think evolution is done making crabs. Some shrimp out there is probably already on its way. Scientists are still figuring this out. They're sequencing DNA, looking for genetic patterns that show up every time something becomes a crab. If there are specific genes that flip on or off during carcinization, that could explain why it keeps happening so consistently. The fossil record is still incomplete, and every few years someone digs up something new that changes part of the story. But for now, the answer is pretty simple. The crab body plan works, and it works well enough that evolution keeps coming back to it, over and over, across millions of years, in animals that have never been related to each other. It's not perfect, it's just good enough for most things, and flexible enough to be tweaked for specific things. And that, apparently, is all it takes to become one of the most successful body plans on the planet. Until next time on Fossil Flicks, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Also, please leave a comment if there's any specific topic that you want me to cover next.